Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another podcast. On today's show, I have James Rooke. He's the General Manager of Effectv, and today we're going to be talking about the evolution of multi-screen video delivery through a proprietary platform that only Effectv has. James, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Brian.
So, James, I've had the pleasure of traveling around the country with the Effectv teams in the U.S., talking with dealers over the last 2 years, and we've had an amazing field game. And for the most part, dealers are used to having their Effectv sales rep come in, bring lunch, really have that what we call belly-to-belly interaction. COVID changed all that. How is Effectv keeping the sales teams healthy and also serving its customers? How's that working out?
Yeah, it's a great question, and obviously been an unprecedented year where we're all kind of managing through significant challenges. In terms of Effectv, from our standpoint, we're putting the health and safety of our clients and our sales team first, and that's the most important thing for us. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, and that pandemic is going to be continuing for a while by the look of things, and so it's critical that we put the health and safety of both clients and employees first. At the same time, we feel super confident in terms of our ability to deliver for dealers. It just may be through different ways of interacting. So we are, our sales teams are out there meeting with auto dealers, ensuring they're kind of following the right health and safety protocols to protect both sides. And we're obviously, like everyone else, leveraging technology to do the best we can to kind of replace face-to-face where that makes sense. That said, I think, on top of that, what's really important to us is during this time, we are able to be a consultative and strategic partner to auto dealers who themselves have obviously been dealing with incredible disruption, whether that be dealerships being closed and needing new ways to engage with consumers, supply chain issues, etc. And so we're super focused on the solutions that we can bring to the table that support the unique needs in this time of the automotive industry, and that's kind of priority one for us.
James, the dealers who are listening to today's podcast and anyone from the auto industry knows that COVID has really accelerated the use of multi-screen devices to watch video, engage with video. Some of the content providers have just been shooting through the roof. In general, what type of lift in consumer engagement on your platforms as you can see, both as a content provider and also an internet provider? And how does that play into dealers reprioritizing their marketing investments with you to reach this multi-screen consumer?
Yeah, so it's been interesting seeing what's been happening, firstly from a consumer standpoint during COVID. So I'm going to break down just so we're on the same page with nomenclature and just talk about kind of TV versus streaming TV, and together that equals multi-screen TV. Traditional TV viewing, based on kind of Comcast data, we see now 8 consecutive quarters of growth, with the average household spending nearly kind of 6.5 hours watching TV today. That's kind of 15%, more in terms of minutes year over year. That's kind of on the traditional television viewing experience. And then for streaming TV, as we all know, there's been huge growth based on the launch of multitudes of streaming services. To us, the way that we see the world is ultimately whether you're viewing through a traditional cable box, you're watching on demand through your cable provider, or you're watching through a streaming TV provider. That's all multi-screen TV. It's high quality, premium, engaging content. And that's what we want to bring to dealers. And so I think the world of thinking about traditional kind of linear television separate from streaming TV is going to go away, and that's kind of accelerating. And ultimately, our job is to be able to use our first-party deterministic data sets to enable our company to allow the auto dealer to be able to follow their in-target audience, regardless of where that viewing is taking place across both traditional television and streaming TV. And that's the priority that we're focused on right now. And what's fascinating during COVID, as an example, is back in kind of March, April timeline, when sports content suddenly went away. A lot of our clients, auto dealers, but also kind of other sectors who wanted to continue to follow those sports viewers didn't know what to do. The good news from our standpoint at Effectv, being part of Comcast, is because of the first-party deterministic data sets that we have, and by that I mean kind of viewership and ad exposure data through the set-top box, we're able to allow our clients to continue to follow the audiences that they want to. So, those in market for buying a truck or whatever it may be, even though that sports content went away, because we know where their viewing is moving to. And so we can allow our clients to have the flexibility to continue to follow their audiences across both traditional TV and streaming TV, and do that in a way that is seamless and against data that can be trusted. And that's kind of one of the major differentiators that we think we bring to the table.
So, James, in the past, and maybe not in the too far distant past, dealers looked at cable as I'm going to buy news and sports. And today, with so many different streaming services, so many different content providers, the viewers that are in any local market are more scattered across these different content channels at any time. And so a dealer who was typically looking for news and sports really is having a little hard time wrapping their head around how do they trust the data sets or what data sets to use. And you just gave a great example. Sports goes away, but you know who those homes were, who were sports watchers. You know what they're watching now, and they have to trust the data. How is Effectv helping dealers choose the right audiences now that it's more complicated, more diverse, more content opportunities? What's the solution for a dealer who says, I really want local awareness, but they realize sports and news, that simplistic model, isn't really the best targeting?
Yeah, so it's a great point, and it is one of the pivots that we'll continue to see, i.e., I historically bought against content where programming or the network was a proxy for my audience, and there'll be a movement to, I just want to reach my audience, which is defined as X. What you said is the absolute key, and that's the trust in the data. And one of the problems in the industry right now is there are kind of a lot of companies out there touting audience-based solutions, but the data sets that those are being kind of executed against are likely, in many cases, more kind of probabilistic than deterministic. And what I mean by that is they're modeled data sets versus kind of first-party data that is coming that we kind of have the opportunity to use for better campaign planning, optimization, and reporting as part of Comcast. And that's a critical differentiator for us. And listen, it's gonna take time, because the old way of buying, which has been, hey, I want to buy news or sports, to you're telling me now I need to trust the data. Well, firstly, you have to trust the data set. And so I think it's critical. So I think for auto dealers out there, really understanding what that data set looks like, and hopefully from our standpoint, recognizing that we're part of Comcast, that gives them a much deeper level of trust that the data sources that we have enable us to provide a much more accurate picture of what's happening with viewing, not just across traditional TV, but across viewing, across streaming TV. And therefore, we can put together much more sophisticated campaigns and optimize those campaigns, and then provide proof of performance at the back end against it based on the foundation of that kind of deterministic data set. Knowing kind of how many times any given household is exposed to a campaign is really different for modeling whether they're likely to be as exposed. And that's the kind of big difference between first party and kind of third party data sets. That's number one. Number two is we're going to have to earn the trust of the dealers by proving the value of audience-based executions against our data sets versus them buying the historic way. And that is going to take time. And that's the commitment that we're going to make to dealers. We're going to turn up. We're going to demonstrate with data, the side-by-side of what it looks like for a content versus an audience-based execution. We're going to work hard on kind of back-end proof of performance. And we're going to build trust over time. And we're going to kind of walk the walk, because I think that's what it's going to take. There is a lot of noise out there from a lot of different companies. And it's, I'm sure, incredibly confusing for an auto dealer who's having to kind of sift through what is real versus smoke and mirrors. And so, from our standpoint, that needs to be our focus, is to build that kind of consultative partnership where we believe truth is on our side in terms of the value we can deliver. And it starts with the data, and it's the intersect of the data on kind of high quality TV and streaming TV, i.e. multi-screen inventories, the intersect of those two things that will deliver better outcomes for auto dealers.
James, you hit the nail on the head, is that dealers used news and sports as a proxy to estimate their audience. And now with a data-driven strategy, we can just say, okay, what's the audience you want? Don't worry about trying to force them or pigeonhole them into sports and news. I can follow them wherever they are and whatever services they're using. That's a big mental change, because dealers would, I saw my commercials during the football game, or I saw my commercials during the news. But we really need to have dealers, and you hit it, trust and proof of performance. The reason why I bring this up is every day someone is calling up dealers saying, hey, I got this OTT, let's advertise an OTT. And at the upcoming Automotive Analytics and Attribution Summit, Effectv will be one of 6 companies presenting their strategies to reach a multi-screen consumer in a local market. And I love this fact that we need to build trust in the data. Now, I think that dealers understand you're a content provider, you're an internet service provider, and you have first-party data. I think that's the strongest piece. And then other people come in and say, well, we have just as good data. I know it's not an easy question to answer, but when I'm talking to dealers, I'm telling them Effectv has the highest quality deterministic data, not probabilistic, determinist, because they're the ISP and the content provider, and there's lots of other hooks in the physical box in the house. What should dealers do when everyone and their brother claims that they have access to the same data and it's just as high quality?
Yeah, listen, it's tricky, because we hear that a lot, and what I do not want to do, and I do not want my sales team to do, because they wouldn't be doing right by our clients, is going and trying to kind of debunk and demystify other people's solutions. Like, I can't control what other people in market can go and say. What I can control and kind of put our chips behind is exactly what you said. We are incredibly confident about the assets that we have as part of Comcast. And that is the combination of scaled TV and streaming TV premium inventory pool based on the long-term contractual relationships we have with TV programmers that, of course, guarantee us access to that inventory across TV and streaming TV. We know we are one of the most scaled OTT providers in the country, and we can stand behind that. We can also stand behind the fact that, as you said, we have first-party deterministic data, both including kind of IP address, that allows us to identify the right target audiences with greater precision, and we can kind of aggregate that viewership data to tell us what audiences are watching and what they're likely to watch next, which informs more effective planning, and then the ad exposure data to give us transparent campaign performance metrics against platforms to inform future campaign optimization. So I say that because we can stand behind that for the reasons that you said. I think auto dealers, and I know and I'm sure they have to really kind of crack beneath the surface and stress test the roots of where that data is really coming from. Because if you don't have first party data, and I think it's relatively easy to determine which companies do and which don't, then by default it's going to be third party, and right. That makes it kind of more probabilistic. But listen, it's really hard for auto dealers because you've got everyone coming in throwing jargon, and it's hard to tell what's smoke and mirrors and what is real. And that's not to say there aren't some really quality solutions out there. There's no question. What we're going to do at Effectv is keep it simple and be true to who we are as part of Comcast, be true to the assets that we've got. And then most importantly, and I think this kind of answers your question, is we're going to walk the walk in terms of proof of performance. And over time, we believe that truth will be on our side and we will be able to deliver better results for the auto dealer. And I think we're in this for the long game. We've been in this for the long game at the local level, working side by side, supporting auto dealers for many years. Yes, it was against an older television only, buy against content versus audience model. And we're all pivoting towards buy against audience, buy multi-screen, be able to prove performance at each stage of the consumer purchase funnel. But why we're confident is we know we have the assets to drive and lead the industry on those pivots. And I think at the end of the day, we want to kind of put our hand up and be held to the results that we deliver, which kind of gets into, I think, a great conversation we can have around proof of performance.
Great. James, I have been telling dealers that video in all platforms that I've tested always performs the best, whether it's video on Facebook versus image or pre-roll. I mean, video is the way we are, attracted to or consumed by media, and the highest quality audiences are going to give dealers their lowest cost per acquisition to get somebody to consider their dealership. And you've been working a long time to put together more comprehensive dashboards, this proof of performance, as we talked about. So I want to encourage all dealers who are listening to today's podcast is to really reconsider your thinking about how you buy video and the targeting. Let the data drive the placement, not try to pick the content that you think attracts your ideal customer. And then take a look at the latest dashboards and reporting from Effectv, because I think that sometimes, James, this is my experience, that if a dealer's dealing through an agency, sometimes the agency doesn't update the dealer with these latest reports. Almost some of the agencies are so old school that they don't even use the new proof of performance reports. And I just want to encourage dealers, and James, maybe you could add to this as well, is that just as you said, test our audience, I also would say is you've completely upgraded your reporting suite so dealers feel absolutely confident that their video message is hitting the right people at the right time and impacting their business. How would you respond to a dealer who says, I haven't seen any new reporting in years?
Yeah, so I'll break that down to a couple of pieces. I think firstly, the topic of proof performance. I believe, and I'm going to kind of step outside of Effectv for a second and just talk about kind of multi-screen television overall. One of the greatest opportunities for all providers who offer high quality multi-screen video as a way for auto dealers to engage with their audience. There is a lot of opportunity and room to grow in terms of providing better proof performance. I think it's important to say that because as an industry, we're not where we ultimately need to be. And the reason that is a shame is because dollar allocations to lower funnel performance marketing, particularly kind of owned by the large digital platform companies, I strongly believe there's an over-index of allocation to that bottom of funnel right now, and it is on those that play a higher funnel and mid funnel to be able to demonstrate how multi-screen TV advertising is actually providing a halo effect through to bottom of funnel, and that it is the kind of digital platform companies that are taking the credit and therefore getting larger allocation of funds. And so it is on us, not on the auto dealer, it's on us to be able to demonstrate at each stage of the consumer purchase funnel the KPIs that we are impacting, and therefore be in a better position to play a bigger role on behalf of the auto dealer. So just as a couple of examples on this, we did a study with one of our attribution partners, so our third-party attribution company called TV Squared, and we did this during COVID, which we thought was an interesting time to do it for obvious reasons. And we looked at website lift for clients that stayed on air during the kind of first month of COVID versus those that didn't. And advertisers that remained on air experienced a prolonged impact of nearly 25% more website engagement in subsequent weeks after airing. And those that went off air saw website visits drop by over 20%. So it's a basic, but it's an important correlation where being able to demonstrate impact on engagement, as well as a bunch of other metrics like further down the purchase funnel, has to become standard. It can't just become case study and exception. And if it does, I think dealers are going to better be able to kind of sit in their cockpit and pull the levers the right way, so they're able to deliver better ROI on each dollar that they spend, versus right now, the digital platform companies, because they're closer to the final sale in many instances, I think are getting kind of overly credited. And one thing that's interesting for auto dealers to look at is outside of their industry is looking at the direct to consumer companies. So by this, I mean companies like Peloton or Chewy.com, all those that go direct to consumer. And what's fascinating is if you look at the top 125 D2C brands, direct to consumer brands, right now they spend nearly $4 billion on TV. That was in, I think, 2019. And the work that the Video Advertising Bureau has done shows that the direct to consumer companies, remember, these are companies that were born on Instagram, they were born on Facebook, this is where they grew their business, are recognizing the power of television to grow their audience and deliver results. And so the Video Advertising Bureau did research that showed that those that are moving into TV are seeing a 20 to 30% lift in website unique visitors relative to before they ran, with some of the biggest spenders seeing over 200% lift in unique visitors. And the reason this is important is because direct to consumer companies are known to have some of the most sophisticated back end attribution modeling in the whole industry. And if they have the most sophisticated kind of algorithmic kind of mathematical models that enable them to tweak where they allocate spend between an Instagram, a Facebook, and all the other channels they've got, and they are pushing more and more into TV, it's something interesting to watch. And if you look at the FANG companies themselves, so Facebook and Amazon and Netflix and Google and Apple, They last year increased TV advertising nearly 20% to about $2.6 billion. And if the fan companies was a single kind of entity in itself, it would be the #1 TV advertiser in the space. So they know it works. Direct consumer companies know it works.
Yes.
It is beholden on companies like Effectv and others in the space to be able to better demonstrate that in a sustainable, scalable way for auto dealers to make it easy for them. And so that is the message I would give to auto dealers. And I think there is a way to go, and you're going to see this from Effectv in 2021 in terms of how we better kind of expose and make it easier to see this proof of performance. Because again, I've said this earlier in our interview, but I think truth is on our side there. And it's fascinating when you look at the biggest digital companies in the world pushing more and more money into TV. They're very smart. They know it works. We just need to do a better job in terms of kind of democratizing that proof of performance and making it simple for a dealer versus having them have to kind of work it out by digging through various reports, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the opportunity. But I want to be clear to dealers, it's on us to kind of come to you and prove that.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, James, because what I've said for years is that, Google, particularly more so Facebook now, because of this click-based media, has been getting credit for sales that, that are part of a larger ecosystem. The dealers that I know that have great creative with a clear brand promise and are using video for multi-screen delivery are just crushing the competition. And dealers who are listening today, if you're going to brag to me, it's like, oh, I'm all digital, like I'm just doing Google and Facebook, and I'm not using video, digital, the new TV, both linear and OTT. Well, you're just missing it, because today the most effective campaigns that I'm seeing are video-based campaigns. And to brag that you're just using Google and Facebook and you've cut traditional spending, well, there's no thing called traditional media anymore. All media channels have evolved, and what James is talking about here is I see Google ads all the time, Microsoft ads all the time, Facebook ads all the time. The largest companies who are influencing consumer behavior are using video, and so should the dealers. And that's why I encourage all dealers who are listening to make sure you get registered for the Automotive Analytics and Attribution Summit. The team at Effectv will be competing and showcasing their solutions with that pride of proof of performance and proprietary data, deterministic data, because of their footprint at the conference, and also be doing a workshop. So I'm really excited that Effectv is standing tall and educating dealers to allow them to make a smart choice. This interview is part of a series called The Road to the AAA Summit. So make sure you check out the other podcasts that have been recently published so you can get a chance to hear from the speakers and thought leaders that will be presenting at the conference. And if this is the first time you're listening to a podcast, know that there are dozens of other great interviews with automotive industry leaders to help us all work together to raise awareness, strategy, and lower the cost to sell cars in the digital age. James, thanks so much for being on the podcast and taking time. And we look forward to getting you back on the podcast in 2021 to talk about the upgrades and proof of performance and hold you accountable to make it easy for dealers to know how to measure the effectiveness of their effective media spend. James, thank you so much. Thanks, dealers who are listening to today's podcast, and we'll catch you at another interview in the days ahead.
Thanks, Brian.